I'm Ignacio, one of the co-founders of Bags, and this is one of the many upcoming Bags Bodega Sessions. We're joined by the one and only Daniel Taylor, my co-founder, friend, brother, and CEO of Bags.
I'm happy to be here. It's going to be fun.
All right, Dan, I'm excited to have you in a hot seat. I don't think this is a very common occurrence. But yeah, I think maybe I'd love to just kick off with a really quick introduction. How do you introduce yourself as a founder?
Cool. So I'm DT, otherwise known as Daniel. I've been a technology founder for the last 8 years now. So my quick background from Northeast, went to Brown. That's where I met Ignacio. Grew up with William, our other co-founder. After Brown, I played soccer professionally overseas. While I was playing, I started a tech company and a small business. The tech company was called Ask Tipster. We pivoted a lot, but ended up building customer acquisition tools for brands and mobile applications and digital asset companies. And I sold that business in 2019 to Flowcode, which is a QR code-driven ad tech company started by an incredible entrepreneur named Tim Armstrong. And I finished out my earn out and launched Bags in summer of 2020. And yeah, now I'm the co-founder and CEO of Bags. Our entire MO and mission is to unlock credit for diverse and women-owned small businesses. We do that through our platform, which enables businesses to easily manage their finances and access good debt from incredible lenders who care about putting money into communities.
That's awesome. I think one thing I love about your story is how early you took the jump into entrepreneurship. Do you want to kind of get into that a little bit? Tell us about your first venture and like where and why that started.
For sure. Yeah. So also I'd say I've been thinking about being an entrepreneur / have been an entrepreneur since high school, actually. The first business I had, so in our town in Greenwich, Connecticut, there was one teen club where people would go on Friday and Saturday nights. And there was one DJ in town that had speakers. And so whenever anyone needed to throw any type of party in town, they would have to rent speakers from that one DJ. And so, one Christmas and birthday, so my birthday and Christmas are very close together. I said, hey, mom and dad, like $500, I need these speakers. Like, it's a business investment. Like, will you get me these speakers? So I ended up getting a pair of JBLs, 3 of them, a sub and 2 supporting speakers. And I started renting out those speakers for, anywhere between $700 to $1,000 a night. And did that for 2 years in high school and went to college with, $30,000, $40,000 in my bank account. So that was my earliest version of entrepreneurship. And actually I continued to rent out the speakers all the way through college, which migrated me into starting an events company in college with you. Actually, we did a whole bunch of incredible fun parties and activations. And but yeah, so that was what would be seen as the most simple entrepreneurial venture. But tech was another thing for me. We tried, myself and my first co-founder, Andrew Duplessis, to build 3 tech companies in college, and they got nowhere, right? Each time we got a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further to the point of making it real. But we never really got a product finished. We kept trying to figure out how to get a product made. And then he's actually the one who called me while I was playing soccer after school and said, hey, I figured it out. And that's really what kind of set my entire journey down, building tech as a core function of my sort of entrepreneurial spirit.
Dude, it's really cool. And I think actually going back to that first venture, the speaker venture, what I love about that story, and it makes me smile all the time, is it just simplifies entrepreneurship. Right? A lot of people say, and we won't take away from the difficulty of the experience, but a lot of people sometimes overcomplicate it, what it means to start your own business. And it needs to be venture backed and it has to be tech and it has to be all these things. But like, I guess what I would love for you to talk about a little bit is like what you still take away and apply today from literally that 16-year-old entrepreneur.
Of course. Well, I mean, the first step is understand a need in the market, right? Like find something that people want, right? And see if you can build something to service the needs of those people. And my barometer of like being a founder, because I think the founder term is often linked specifically to tech founders and not business owners as a whole, entrepreneurs as a whole. And I really think founders, wear a lot of different hats these days. Build something and sell it to one person. Like that is, from my perspective, like that is the line of want to be a founder or want to be an entrepreneur and an entrepreneur, right? Like want to start a business and have a business. And I think with that, it was like, $500 investment, $35,000, $40,000 of return, right? Very little time left, et cetera. But it was really that simple. And I think that's, at least for me, I think when I think about like the broader future of entrepreneurship, I think, all right, we can talk about the broader Shark Tank effect, which I'm sure we'll get to, but like it's really about just starting with the simple things and applying and filling a need in hopefully an industry or sector that you're excited about, and giving them the product that they want, and making a return. Right? Like get them to actually have a financial arrangement with you for that product, good or service.
Dude, totally. I think that's the best summary for it. I'm not going to repeat it because I really love it. And I think it's something that we try to embody every day at Bags. Let's just kind of go down that entrepreneurial journey. Like, what's your take on failure? Because, you had 3 attempts at 3 companies and you failed. And from a third party perspective, you were never phased.
Well, yeah. Well, I think to start any type of business, you need a certain level of what would be considered blind confidence, right? Like you got to believe that you can get it done, right? And if you're able to maintain that level of belief, right? Like that's sort of the first part. And then the reality that I think I've had to learn both the hard way and just there will be more bad days than good as a founder, right? Like, we've talked about this before, right? Like you need to fail often, fail fast. We went through Stanford StartX program in 2017, which is an incredible accelerator connected to Stanford with my first company. And they were talking a lot about failure as well. And one of the mentors got up on stage and he was like, listen, why, these businesses are valued at such crazy multiples, right? So you could say a 10x multiple on revenue or whatever that is because at every point they had to make a right or a left turn, right? And at each point they failed a little bit, but they learned about that failure and had it inform the next decision that they needed to make. And so the way I think about it and the way kind of we think about it more broadly at Bags is like the faster you can fail, the better. But it's not failing without capturing the learnings isn't as valuable. And the learnings can be both internal and human related in how you react to it, and also be super instrumental in regards to the decisions you make as a business owner.
I love that. And I think that velocity to fail is really the key. Then the real failure is just not going for it and not trying. So I think one thing that anyone's close to you will probably back me up on this, but it feels like building businesses or entrepreneurship or founding, like whatever term you want to use around it, is like your main quest, right? Like you're obviously, you went to an awesome school, you were a professional soccer player, but at least as your co-founder and your friend, it's always felt like your thing is business. I would just love for you to kind of explore that idea a little bit, and then also maybe the perspective of like, does that have to be the case for everyone?
My plan wasn't to play soccer and start a company. That was not the plan at all. you know, I was supposed to, go work at a big bank after I played soccer. Um, and I think the plan was always to end up in some sort of entrepreneurial seat. It just happened a lot quicker than I thought it would. Um, and honestly, I'm grateful for that because it's enabled me to take those risks. And we can talk about the privilege I had in taking those risks, which is a core component of it. And fail pretty frequently and early on to get to a place now in terms of, being able to do exactly this, right? Starting incredible companies with incredible people with incredible impact. But I think the thing when I talk to anyone who's thinking about starting a business is the reality is that starting a business isn't for everybody, right? I think the first step in really understanding, whether going down and starting a business is the right play for you is just honestly a self-reflection exercise, right? Like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Are you comfortable with risk? Can you deal with the anxiety, right? Can you deal with a little bit of the stress? Can you use those failures and those bad days as fuel for the good days? And what I would say, though, is that the archetypes of the types of business that exist now as compared to just when I was starting are much more vast. One. Two, the other thing that I like to say to founders is like, just because you want to be the founder, like you can be an entrepreneur, doesn't mean you need to be the CEO, right? Like understanding that like, hey, maybe the thing that you're best at is just being the product guy or just being the best engineer on the team or just being the incredible creative and marketer. And can you surround yourself with incredible people who have those other skills, right? And get yourself in that seat of, continuing to do the things that are doubling down into your own strengths.
I love that. I love that perspective. And I think it's something that really resonates. One piece you touched on there, and I'm just going to ask you to repeat stuff that you've already said to me in private, but like, what do you tell yourself? Because, you're going to have more bad days than good days, right? Can you deal with the anxiety? Can you deal with the nervousness? And we've had a lot of conversations around that, but what do you tell yourself on the bad days? Like, what does that internal dialogue look like? Because, we've talked about it's really a battle to survive. That's all we're doing. It's just how do you make it to the next day and the next month and the next 6 months?
It's how do you make sure that you survive long enough to figure it out, right? And yeah, what keeps me going through those bad days and what do I tell myself? Tipster, which was the first company I started, I used to lose a lot of sleep, honestly, especially on the bad days, especially around anything that we were launching, right? Because we would build up, do the campaign, put together the strategy, like have the incredible content, all the things. And like, it was either there's a bug, right? We did the launch and it was flat. Someone gave us negative feedback. A user's blocked from paying, right? Like all the things that you can imagine happening will happen. And by the way, we missed the date that we set for ourselves to go do that action, right? And so I think after that, it was about 3.5, 4 years of starting and running that business and thinking about this time around is like, I think I lose a lot less sleep on the bad days because I know that like, thinking in the concept of making right and left turns, that it's getting me closer and closer to finding that nugget of opportunity and fit. And, I honestly, I think a big thing that I always rely on as a founder is my experience in sports. Because, it's you get injured, you get knocked down. It's about how you get up. And it's a long game. It's a long season, right? And sometimes you lose, but you got a game next week. You got to roll up your sleeves and just like keep going. And that's one of it. And I think the other part is like I think it really helps if you really enjoy working with the people that you work with, right? Like if you really can lean on those around you as supporters, because what I've discovered about myself, both in sports and as a founder, is that what makes me tick is like the work that I'm doing with the people, right? Like I enjoy hustling with and for my teammates. And that's the thing that like, all right, the day might be bad, but like, you know what? If I'm not showing up, I shouldn't expect anyone else to show up. And if I'm not showing up, I'm letting my co-founders down. And like, that's not okay. So like,
Tell me a little bit about the process to get there, because obviously it's like a super self-aware thing. It's like you get what makes you tick, and I've seen you like hook onto that in the tough moments, and it really drives you. But I don't think everyone necessarily like has that clarity. How did you get to that?
well, one, I think I leaned really strong on people that knew me well to help me understand how to define that and put things and statements behind. And I think what's incredible in today's world, and like, within companies like Bags and others, is that like a lot of people have done it before, right? And talking to somebody who's been in that space, who's been in that seat, who has that experience, I think really does demystify things, because I think part of the battle is just like not knowing whether this is normal, right? Whether you are failing and what, like, and someone sitting me down and just going, hey, listen, like, here are the things that you can really thrive at. Here are your holes and gaps, right? Just in terms of how I've seen you operate, right? Let's double down in here, work on how you strengthen these, but really make sure that you have their minds around you on the other side in order to get you to the right place.
Totally. And I think what you just did is really cool. And I think you put a very simple definition around mentorship. I like the idea of like, you hear a lot, oh, find a mentor, talk to a mentor. And you're just like, who is like, what, where do I start with that? And I think what you just said, talk to someone that's 2 or 3 steps ahead of you and just get a benchmark. And that's a really easy way to start around mentorship, which is really cool. I'm going to shift gears and go back to something I know we both care about a lot, but you use the words access and privilege. And I think that was one of the early conversations we had around starting Bags and like what Bags would become. I'm just going to let you riff on those 2 words a little bit, because I know they mean a lot to you.
So let's take it to summer 2020, right? End of May 2020. The world is in its first year of COVID. There's unrest holistically. George Floyd and others were murdered by police in many cases. And I think, like many, at least for me, there was a feeling of, okay, let's do something. But I think the do something came after let me just reflect on my own path, journey, life, and really how fortunate and privileged I am, right? To have been able to grow up in the areas that I grew up in, be able to attend incredible institutions and meet individuals like yourself. And then the real piece to my, privileges is, in starting down the path of being a founder, right? And what has enabled that is access, specifically to some of the things like we've mentioned, mentorship, people who've done it before, right? Education, which I've been very, very privileged to be a part of at great places. Work experience, and the last one is capital, right? And during that time, that's really the thing that set me on the course of being a founder or not, right? It was the family, friends, co-founders' first check in that gave me even the bandwidth to pursue the path of being a founder. And granted, my mentality and pathway of founder was really focused on tech, right? So it could have been different if I was potentially going down another path, but either way, access was the thing to sort of like accelerate me forward, access to capital. And so that's really kind of what to the theme of like doubling down on what you're good at. I remember I called a mentor of mine, Damian Dwin at the time, and I said, hey man, listen, I want to do something. He's an incredible black professional who runs, who ran at the time a multi-billion dollar private equity firm. And I said, yo, like should I start a fund, an accelerator? How do I uplift like, those in my community, really with the goal of like, and the perspective of, entrepreneurship is the vehicle for equity and wealth generation. And if we don't empower the entrepreneurs in our own communities with access, we won't actually see the change that we want to see in the broader world. Right. And he was like, yeah, listen, you could start a fund. I'm sure you'd be okay at it, but like, that's not what you do. What you do is you build things. You build products with great people and build a product in the space, right, to solve that problem. Build some tech to help solve that problem. And like, that's really the thing that we've, used as our pillar and our mission since day one, right? Like, if we're able to make access to capital for people of color and women who are starting great businesses, that will have a net positive impact on businesses' ability to hire great people. It will create stronger local economies, and honestly, like, create more wealth in a localized way for people in our communities, right? And like, that's the thing that we've been holding on, true to since we started.
And to tie back that kind of like honestly optimistic and idyllic mission back to, not everyone should be an entrepreneur. It's not the best
Mhm.
fit, but everyone that wants to be should get a shot at it. And I think
Correct.
that's where it comes together for us. I know we have some quick fires that we'll get to in a few minutes, but one thing I wanted to get to is I think there are, like, under this theme of anyone that wants to be an entrepreneur should get the opportunity. What would you say, to someone that was in a similar position to you, 8 years ago? Like, what advice could you give? And I want you to get it kind of specific around like a young black man in America that wants to start a business.
Yep.
Right? It's a very unique position, and you have that lived experience for a plethora of
Yep.
reasons. But what would you say to yourself?
Yep. So I think context and time period is important. I think the first thing is there are more ways. The barrier to entry to start a business today is lower than it ever has been, both in regards to the expertise you need, the capital you need, right? And the network you need in order to make that happen, right? And again, my definition of starting a business is finding one thing that someone or people or there's a market that needs it, right? Like, one thing that someone needs and servicing them with a product, good, or service that solves that need or problem. That's it. That's simple. And do it in a space that you are actually passionate about, right? And so my advice would be, start early, start simple, right? And whether that's a product, and by the way, when I say start early, start simple, it's not always the sexiest businesses in the world that honestly make the most money and the most ROI, right? It's really not. There are incredible multi-million-dollar businesses who honestly do some of the simple things, right? Provide services that people need in markets that don't have them in a way that's really, 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 really professional and successful, right? So, so that's the first part. Next, find someone in your community who's done it. Spend time with them. Literally give your time, right? Show up and watch how they move, right? Watch how they spend their time. Ask the questions that you might think are stupid. And if you can do that, right, like, that'll give you at least a taste of the experience in terms of what it's like. And the last part is, like, once you start doing it, no, it will not be easy. And in reality, you will fail a lot. But the sooner you start that journey, the better. Because again, I think there are more ways that you can do it today than ever, including things like, no code platforms if you want to start technology, selling an online course, drop shipping, right? Like affiliate marketing, third-party sales, um, local service-based businesses from, you know, plumbing to, right? Like there's so much opportunity that's out there. And again, it doesn't necessarily take that much both capital and it'll take time and hustle, but capital to get
I
started.
love it. I love it. I think especially this giving up your time to learn is absolutely invaluable.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there anything I don't know, you want to get off your chest that maybe I've left on the table that would be good to share?
I think it's an extremely exciting time to be building businesses. And I genuinely think the opportunity to build incredible businesses now is in categories and is in ways that are revenue first, minimum viable product first, right? And potentially not down the venture path. Encourage all those who are thinking about starting companies and growing businesses, right? Like double down into revenue. Raising money from third-party investors is not what it's all caught up to be, right? And really, at the end of the day, you got to remember you're giving up ownership to someone else. Maintaining ownership is really the name of the game, because that's half of why we do it, right? Like I do it to be able to control how I spend my time, where I spend my time, and with who, and the impact that I want to have on the world.
I love it. Yeah. Nothing to add there, really. We're going to do the quick fire ones. You ready?
Yep.
What is your name?
My name is DT, otherwise known as Daniel Taylor.
Your typical order at your local bodega or deli?
I do whole wheat toast, bacon and egg, no cheese. I'm lactose intolerant. Usually I get a banana or a little bit of fruit on the side with a black iced tea, no sugar, no sweetening, no nothing.
Bonus question. What happens if you don't get any order at your bodega or deli?
Then I get hangry and no one wants to see me hangry. Is not fun for myself, for my team, for my friends, for my girlfriend, nobody. So I need to be fed.
Yeah. So what is Bags? What do we sell and where are we located?
Bags is located in New York City, but we also have teammates in Brazil, and teammates in Mexico City, teammates in California, and teammates in London. Bags unlocking credit for diverse women-owned businesses. We built a platform to make it easier for you to manage your finances and access good debt. And our entire MO is about increasing businesses' access to capital in order to help them hit their growth goals. I started Bags because 99% of businesses aren't a good fit for venture capital. And in reality, in order to get them the right types of capital, we need to make sure that they have the information they need, the education in regards to their own eligibility, and the lenders at the table in order to make sure they find the right cash. And by putting all those together, like we can create a ton of impact.
How did you fund the start and growth of the business?
So we initially started the growth of the business. I went back to my previous investors and sold a dream, sold myself, and said, hey, here's the problem. I want to solve access to capital with technology. Back me, back my co-founders in order to do so. And fortunately enough, I was able to get the first $500,000 to set off on this journey.
What's the hardest part about growing the business so far?
The hardest part about growing Bags thus far is that there are a lot of problems in small business lending and small business growth, right? And the hardest part is staying focused on the problem that we want to solve. And the problem that we want to solve is access to capital.
100% agreed. What's your biggest win to date?
Biggest win to date. I actually say the biggest win to date was getting you to join us on this journey. Because without you, we would not be where we are at all. So, it's definitely Ignacio joining the team as a co-founder about a year into our building of Bags.
So that's kind, my brother, and the feeling is mutual. We can cut that out, but what impact do you want Bags to have on the world? Like, what does the world look like if we're successful?
The impact that we want to have on the world and what the world would be if Bags were successful is more businesses would get more bags more often. What that actually means is businesses would generate more wealth. Founders would generate more wealth by growing a business, which would in turn create more jobs, better local economies, and honestly, a better world for all of us to live in with equal access to opportunity.
Why should someone work with bags?
If you're a business and you're thinking about alternatives to venture, or maybe you already have a loan that you're looking to refinance, or maybe you reached a point where you've hit your growth journey and you need some capital, check out bags. We've got some incredible lending partners with some of the best rates in the market. Our entire MO is making sure that you find the right types of capital for you, not just the most expensive one or the fastest or the cheapest. And in reality, like, we'll make sure that at least at a minimum, you'll leave understanding how to leverage your own personal finances within the business in order to help them grow, help yourself grow.
Cool. Now, the most important question of the whole session. Would you rather be a tiger or a hummingbird?
I would rather be a tiger, 100%. Just to give a little bit of backstory as to that question, we ran an accelerator program with 20 incredible entrepreneurs within the first 6 months of starting Bags. We did it so that we could really understand and get in depth as to what the problem was that we were hoping to solve. And the first virtual meetup we got all 20 entrepreneurs on the call. I asked my co-founder, William, to come up with a few, meet and greet questions. And this was one of the questions that he came up with. Would you rather be a tiger or hummingbird? I thought it was crazy. But we asked the first question: what do you think community means to you? How do you feel about the word community, and what does it really mean? And then we asked them, would you rather be a tiger or a hummingbird? And the chat erupted. People went off, turned their mic on. They went on camera, and people literally debated their position as it relates to being a tiger or hummingbird for 25 minutes. And since then, we ask every teammate when they join Bags whether they would rather be a tiger or hummingbird.
And we are proud tigers on this call. Awesome. Dan, thanks for opening up and, just sharing a lot of your story that I don't think we get to share on a daily basis. Honestly, for me, it's been, every time I hear these things, it's re-energizing, it's reinvigorating. It makes me want us to really do what we're out here to do with Bags. So,
Without a
thanks, my
doubt.
brother.
I appreciate you, man.